2 weeks or 3 weeks trying to get it done. We made the same mistake with Eze. We made the same mistake with Morgan Gibbs-White. If Thomas Frank is asking the director of football, whoever it is, Lang, Paratici, whatever, these are the players I want, and they made the phone calls, and those players are not available, then isn't that a combination of both the club saying the only way you could get them is if you're paying double the money that they're worth, or Thomas Frank is saying, I'd rather just wait and see.
Do we not think there's a plan? Do we not think that? Sorry, Stel. I was just going to say, do we not think that a conversation has been had where Thomas Frank is saying, well, look, this isn't ideal, but this is what I can do till the January transfer window. I've got to look at the long-term picture here, not a short-term fix for a long-term problem. I mean, what is his options? As Sean said, what are you going to do? Push Kudos back out to the left-hand side where he hates playing, apparently, and put Brennan Johnson out on that right-hand side? We've seen how he is on the left. It's an absolute disaster, in my opinion. He seems to be getting worse, not better, out on that left-hand side. Or do you put Richie out there on the left-hand side and put, as Sean said, put Kolo Muani in through the middle? Are we saying that he's happy with that window, or is he saying, you know what, I can make do? I think I can make do with what I've got until the next window.
Johnny, he can't make do. He's deluded.
The big problem.
I don't know. I'm guessing. We're surmising.
Yeah. I think Frank is a deluded manager if he thinks he can make do until January, because when these games come thick and fast, 2 games a week, and we're looking at Odebert's. Look, on the weekend, Richarlison and Sarr, they got exposed for what they really are: average football players. They got off to a cracking start, but when the going gets tough, missing. Not just them, a lot of that squad.
Palhinha. Hang on. Right, I don't disagree with you. I agree with you, but I was shocked at how bad Palhinha looked, like a 38-year-old man running through quicksand. I was absolutely gobsmacked. Like you,
he had a stinker.
I've watched him for 2 years, but have we got this romanticized view of Palhinha, like you have and like I have, of the player we wanted 2 years ago? The version of Palhinha that we're getting from Bayern Munich is far removed from that version that we romanticized about that we wanted 2 years ago.
Johnny, I think there's two things. There's 2 things I noticed with Palhinha on the weekend. One was he looked tired. He genuinely looked tired. I don't know if he's fully match fit, but I don't want to use that as an excuse because he seemed pretty okay against City the week before. And the other thing I noticed with Palhinha is he was getting pulled out of position left, right, and centre because Bournemouth's tactics did a number on us, and our defence was getting split open. He was having to shift left, right, trying to put out fires. And I think he wasn't getting much help from Sarr and Bentancur, not because they also didn't have good games. So I think Palhinha is better than what we saw on the weekend. But Johnny, you're right. If we see that a few more times, then I think there's validity in what you've said. Maybe he isn't up to it. Maybe that might be the thing. I hope not. I think he is.
I think maybe that's why we.
There's no one else that can play in the 6.
Guys, the bottom line, Johnny, the bottom line is that again, I have this same feeling. And yes, I'm very, the 4 players that came in, I'm sure, players can have a bad game. Palhinha can have a bad game. Bournemouth were absolutely top drawer on Saturday and ran rings round us in midfield. They were so quick, so fast. They had legs. They were superb. But again, you get the feeling once more, we're always left short. And this is Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. It never changes. We're always short. Every single transfer.
Short relative to what, Lubo? Before you go on a Levy rant, short relative to what, mate?
Short relative to having the number of good established players that we.
So had we signed Lookman, would you not be saying that, or would you still be saying we're short relative to our defence? If
we'd have brought in Ake and Lookman, then I would have been very happy and would have been feeling a lot better about the squad. We're short we're thin on the grounds. We've got 25, I think 26 now, because I'm reading Solomon's deal has fallen down. So Solomon's staying with Spurs. So we've got, I've got a list here. We've got 26 of which.
But let me ask this though: if we didn't have injuries right now to Maddison, Decky, Dragusin, to Kai, then I'm sure Arsenal fans right now. I'm sure Arsenal and Solanke, I'm sure Arsenal fans right now, with the fact that they've lost 3 or 4 of their first team, are probably reflecting on the window, despite the fact that they've signed 7 players. I think it's 7. They're probably saying, "Well, we're still short. We're short in the back line now." Liverpool's deal with Gay collapsed tonight. Everyone, I think, universally says that Liverpool had the best window of anybody, but yet they are now 1 injury away from a nightmare at the back. Newcastle United, Manchester City. You said the Bournemouth game changed things a little bit. It exposed us. Manchester City got walked through, in my opinion, at times by Brighton, and that's a team that did all their business early. So, isn't there just the
Sean,
the lowest common factor here, that the sort of the common denominator is that injuries will reflect your squad strength regardless of what happens. It doesn't matter how you can only get. Hang on one second, still. You can only have 2. You can only really have 2 players in your first team for any one position, and if both of those get injured, you're screwed. You're scrambling. If 1 or 2 of those goes out, big players go out at the same time for an extended period of time, you're scrambling, and that's already what's happening in certain teams, and it's already what's happened to Tottenham throughout the summer before the season started. If everyone's back fully fit again, our squad looks a lot different, doesn't it, Lubo? Or Stel? I know you wanted to come in.
Sure. Would we have signed Moani and would we have signed Simmons if Maddison, Kulu, and Solanke weren't injured? I don't think we could.
I've got no idea, mate. But we're invoking different realities. But we would have signed other people. If Maddison hadn't got injured, mate, I'm sure we would have spent money elsewhere. We're not going to sit here and say if there was no injuries, we wouldn't have signed anybody. So we're invoking realities that we can't really comment on.
We always sign as a reaction. It's always a case of you say that. But we've just about got enough defenders, just about. So we haven't signed any of those. But the ones that get injured, right? We've lost players. Bringing someone in that. For me, I think we're still a reactionary club, not a proactive club. I don't think we're building. I think we're just filling the gaps, as opposed to building on something. That's how it still seems to me. Although what we have signed, I'm actually quite happy with it.
Can I just add here that this is a comment about, which is quite topical, about why, I think myself, Sean, and I know Lubo were keen for Vuskovic to stay. He's stated, they offered me an option to stay, to play in case of any injury or to play in the cup matches, but I wanted continuous minutes. They have Romero and Mickey van der Ven playing there, 2 of the best centre-backs in the world at the moment. I believe in myself, but it's really, really difficult to play next to them. I have faced them in training and realised that I still have a lot of work to do to make myself better. A lot of work and a little luck. So I will be back. I think that's, I think
that's interesting. That's interesting, to be honest, Johnny.
Yeah,
who said that? Sorry.
So Vuskovic basically called himself out and said he's not ready.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, I saw that. Yeah, sorry. Vuskovic. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you what, though. Tell you what, if we one injury, this is where I will join your, join the party of people that are saying we're not ready. I'd rather have him than whoever it is that's going to have to come in off of the junior. What's his name? But Davies is the last remaining sub after Takai and Dragusin, right? If Romero or Van der Ven get injured on international duty, we are massively under the cosh, massively in trouble. But I guess that's, it's like injuries are by the by with football. But at the end of the day, we have no depth. So I 100% concede that we should have got a centre back. 100%.
Yeah,
I think the challenge with the injuries debate, and you're right, everyone is impacted by that. You're only going to have a certain number because the squad size has to be a certain size, right, as well. So you're only. I think for me, when there's glaring holes though in the starting 11 that haven't been addressed, and with some going, as I say, for me the left wing was a non-negotiable, almost more than, we're going back to the Moani conversation. you know, if Solanke hadn't got injured, I was happy to accept, even though I don't think either of them are good enough, Solanke or Richarlison. I was happy enough to accept that we might have to wait until next summer for a marquee striker signing. But for me, we've just missed a massive opportunity. And as I say, I don't think we're yet ready to be in that position where we can make those decisions to say we'll go without. I think you need to be in a better place, like a Liverpool are, where last summer their squad was in a good place. You know, the starting 11 was an established starting 11 with loads of depth up top, where they could make that decision to say, do you know what, we'll wait a summer before we go big. I don't personally think Tottenham are in that position where we can make that decision. So, and it probably comes back to the signing of Tell as well, to be honest, because you know if we hadn't signed Tell and we'd signed someone else who is more ready now, one could argue we probably wouldn't be having such a detailed, in-depth conversation on the left wing position. But I think, you know, I do buy into your argument with Tell, Sean, that although it was shaped as an option to buy in January, I think there was a gentleman's agreement, which there quite often is with these things, that we were always going to make that deal happen just at a renegotiated price. So I think
I'm not sure if it was a gentleman's. I think it was
done in January.
Shame it wasn't.
I'm pretty sure it was an option that was only pending one outcome, which was whether the player wanted to stay.
That's
well,
what
that
I
would be
heard
an obligation, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's an option.
It was a loan with obligation, subject to Tell's decision of whether he wants to stay.
It's a shame it wasn't a gentleman's agreement that we had with Manchester City to let Kane go to Manchester City. What I do know is when you look at Arsenal's team, look how many injuries they've had. I know they didn't win at the weekend, but what I'm saying to you is, you know, they lost Saliba. They still had Calafiori. They still had Mascara. They still had every single position, even though they can take injury after injury after injury and still field a very strong squad because they have strength in depth. And now they're bringing in Hincapié on top of all of that. On top of all of those defenders, losing Saliba would normally mean, like, if we had Saliba and Gabriel and we lost one of them, like we lose Mickey van der Ven, we're banging trouble. If Mickey van der Ven pulls his hamstring on international duty, the whole fan base is going to implode. We know it. Whereas if that happened to Arsenal, they've got contingency plans for all of their positions at the back of the back of the pitch, not to mention the midfield. And we don't have that. We're miles away from
Johnny,
that.
do you know why? It's because they build on what they've got. Son and Werner leave, we still haven't filled that void. It's almost like we got Vicario because Lloris went. We got Van der Ven because Vertonghen went. We've got Kudus because we've lost Werner. We signed players.
Are we trying to pretend like we didn't try to get Eze? We didn't try to get Savio. We didn't try to get this.
No, we're just talking about what I'm saying is
squad depth.
We're talking about squad depth. We're not talking about individual players. We're saying that squad depth. When you look how many options Arsenal have in the middle of the park: Noni, Zubamendi, Mourinho, Saka. Martin, honestly,
but they got the same squad that we have.
They have. We do not have the depth of Arsenal. No,
they've got better players, but we have the same size squad. Like people make out like there's like this never-ending
squad. But our squad, but Sean, our squad's very, very average, though, isn't it? Squad-wise, it's an average.
No, I mean, I don't think it is.
We don't have the depth, Sean.
You saw on the weekend it's average. You saw it.
In what way? Like, hang on a second. So, are we saying that Man City's a shit team because they lost to Brighton on the weekend, or that we beat Man City and they lost by being beaten? No, let's not.
Forget about results, Sean. Forget about results.
The point that Stel just made is that we saw on the weekend that our squad is shit. Our squad has no depth. I'm just saying the same squad we managed to beat Manchester City, and then you could put it down to the voodoo of Tottenham City. They then go to Brighton, who don't have a squad as good as City or Tottenham, in my opinion, but certainly not as good as City. And then they go and lose there as well. Like,
it's taken away from my point.
In that case, Sean, right? You have to blame Frank. Then your logic says you have to blame Frank.
Hang on. No, you're not blaming.
I do blame Frank.
No, Sean's logic. Sean's logic.
I do blame Frank for Bournemouth, but I actually think that Bournemouth just were better than us.
That's my point.
Sorry, Johnny, you want to bring something? You want to?
Hang on. Right, hang on 1 second. Right. This conversation has been completely hijacked. All I'm talking about here, right, is fucking strength in depth. Forget about the loss at the weekend and the loss of this weekend. What I'm saying is we can't handle too many. Like if Mickey van der Ven goes, we don't have enough backup as the left centre back. Arsenal have 3 or 4, right? Other clubs have plenty of backup. I know the squads are exactly the same, unless you're Chelsea, where you've got 47 in a holding pen and another 47 in another company in Strasbourg or whatever. I'm talking about our strength in depth is not enough.
Relative to what expectations, Johnny?
Okay, let me ask Sean.
Sorry, Lilywhite, just super quick.
The expectation of a big
expectation of what? To do what? To win the league? To win the Champions League or to finish fifth?
The expectation of a club to build a £1 billion stadium with a massive fan base, a global.
Hang on, no, don't. Let's not take it back to this bullshit. This season, hang on, sorry, Stel, just one sec, mate, please. I'll ask Johnny the specific question. Johnny, specifically to you, you said our depth isn't good enough. I don't necessarily disagree. I look at the bench at times. I look at the areas of the pitch. I can concede. But relative to what? Yeah. Every point everyone has to make about some bigger picture thing has to be relative to something. Is the expectation that we are going to finish fifth? And if so, are you still saying that the squad isn't good enough to do it? If it's relative to Liverpool, I agree with you.
Look, I'm saying I don't want to be in a position where it's so glaringly obvious. And we've been in this position before. Defensively, at Spurs, we say, when the window closes, we are one injury away from an issue, right? One.
Same as Liverpool, though, right?
No.
Well, now.
Yes, Liverpool.
Yes, because they didn't sign.
In the same area of the pitch that we are.
Right, hang on.
And relative to their expectations, which is league titles and Champions League victories, it's a big deal as well.
Hang on, let me finish, right? What I was saying to you, as you well know, Sean, I've said since this transfer window opened, unless Manchester City, they made a mistake getting rid of Quansah, and if they don't sign Mark Gahey, they could jeopardise the league and the Champions League because they have no strength in depth in that centre-back position. I called it, I agree with it, and you're 100% right. Arsenal aren't in that position. Liverpool have made a glaring mistake leaving it to the wire for this to happen. They should never have let Quansah go, just like Crystal Palace didn't do the deal until they had Gahey in the bag. They were convinced themselves. Now they've put themselves in a position that if Virgil van Dijk gets injured, they're fooked at the back, right? I'm saying Spurs are, as usual, one injury away. If they lose a left back, right? If they lose Mickey van der Ven, I don't believe we have the adequate left back cover, unless you think Ben Davies is that guy. And I feel we are short on the left wing, and it could ultimately cost us. And for that, I feel like we've let Thomas Frank down. But if Thomas Frank has been offered a Nathan Ake or a left winger, and he has said, you know what, they ain't good enough for me, then that's on him.
And that's fair enough. But like 100%, I'm not sitting here saying that we're not short. 100% we are. But I'm just asking the question to all of you relative to what expectation? Because Liverpool are short in the same areas that we are relative to very, very high expectation. If Tottenham's expectation is to compete with or wherever they are in your mind, then that's the relativity. That's what any opinion has to be relative. Sure. But guys, we have 9 minutes before we have to finish. We can either carry on this or we can talk about Bournemouth. It's up to you guys. I'm happy to go.
Go over the 2 hours.
Still, hang on, mate. We are short. If we're going for fifth place, we're short. Forget the top 4. They've had fantastic transfer windows. Don't understand why we can't even have half of the sort of windows that they have, because we are Tottenham Hotspur, and I'm not going to be livid like a lot of people and downplay expectations, because this is still a big club, and Levy and co have diminished the standing of our club. But in order to get fifth, we are short. We are short. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with Spurs actually aiming to finish fifth this season. You know,
No, there's not. There's nothing. There's nothing wrong with it. But the same teams that are also fighting for that haven't had a perfect window either. I'm not defending it. By the way, like I actually think that Tottenham's window wasn't as good as a lot of people that are in the Levy out camp. So like I'm not defending it. I'm just like the purpose of any opinion is that your opinion can't just be like a statement. It has to be relative to an expectation. That's the way that it works in football. Like, if you want Tottenham to be competing for the league title, then we're miles away. If you thought a month ago when I asked you guys all this on a show about 2 weeks ago, I said, where do you expect Tottenham to finish this year if the window finished the way it did? I'm pretty sure you all said somewhere between 6th and 8th. And then you all said if we go and get another a 10 and a forward, I think you said left winger, but a 10 and a forward. I'll open it up, expand it. You said 5th. We have Xavi Simons since then, and we have Mawani. So now the expectation, according to your own logic previously ascribed here, should be 5th. And in that world, you're competing with teams that are also just as vulnerable to injuries, just as vulnerable to being short.
There's a lot of good teams that aren't in Europe, Sean, that aren't going to have the amount of games and the injuries that we're probably going to sustain because we're in the Champions League. There's a lot of good teams in this league. Like you saw on the weekend, Bournemouth, they're a good team. They're not in Europe.
Okay, so let me ask
when Europe kicks in for us, we're going to realise how fucking short we are. We're going to
I feel like when this conversation started, and certainly in our WhatsApp group today, I'm pretty sure that everyone said the window was somewhere between a 6 or 7 or an 8 out of 10.
I didn't answer.
And yet, you might not have done, but I think that was the general vibe. And yet we're now spinning it into somehow it's got back to Daniel Levy. So it's a 7 out of 10 window, but Levy's still a shit show.
Sure. No, I think people are just saying it's a missed opportunity, aren't they? I think most people are given a level of credit, right? I think on your question about pitching it relative to who, right? We can either take the owner's words of we want to compete for the Premier League and the Champions League and be part of the Big Six, and use his own words and say clearly, comparatively to those, as you acknowledge, we're not quite there. I think if the aim is more realistic, which I think we had a really good opportunity of having a shout of 5th, right? I think most people would, particularly as Villa have had a shit show of a window because of their own over ambition historically and the hamstrung by the rules, and Newcastle have had a mixed window, having lost Isak. They've made other signings, right? So I think this was our opportunity to really close the gap on Newcastle and Villa, which has been created by our own mismanagement over the last couple of years, right, in terms of recruitment. I think we've missed that opportunity to make this a 9 out of 10 window. As I said myself, I've given it a 7, 7.5. I think it quite easily could have been a 9 just by signing a left winger and by signing a centre half.
So can you understand to the moderate fan how that sounds though? You're giving the window a 7.5, but if you're choosing one phrase to describe it, it's a missed opportunity. It feels like it's
no.
I'm happy, just adding but I'm not going to allow it to sound happy.
That's me adding to my own point to just give some extra context on this exact specific discussion we have. If you ask me to summarise the window, it would be it's been strong, but a missed opportunity to be perfect.
Well, how often is a window perfect, Connor?
Well, Liverpool have had a perfect window.
Connor, can I jump in?
But it's a bit.
No, they haven't. No, they haven't.
No,
they haven't. It failed.
Arsenal and Liverpool have had 9 out of 10 windows.
Connor, can I jump in on this?
Let me just answer that last bit to Connor, just in case my signal goes. Sorry, Stel. I think they spent hundreds of millions of pounds midfield and attack. Absolutely sensational. But they've made a huge ricket. I said it before. You sold Quanta to buy Leverkusen before you had Gahey in the bag, and now you've got
Leone for 30 million as well. Who's a decent option. So hang on a second, right? 9 out of 10 window.
He's an 18-year-old kid, right? He's been called up to Italy, right? But he has got no experience in the Premier League. You've got Joe Gomez, right, who is injury prone as anything. Kanate, who's having brain farts every week. And so you've got Virgil van Dijk. They've had to play Endo and Robertson at centre-back. That's how desperate it's gone. You can't be doing that playing in the Champions League and in the other leagues, in my opinion. Sorry, Steve.
At the same time, they won the league, finished 40 points above us, and have signed 5 starting 11 players. So, I think relatively, even though they've made that mistake and they expected Gray to happen, it obviously didn't. It's still easily a 9 out of 10 window.
I'd love to have that problem.
Can I just say this, please? Right. 3 things. Number one, as a Spurs fan, I think I have the right as a Big Six club to expect high standards for my club. However, I don't have high expectations because of the way we operate. So I have high standards, but lower expectations.
Yeah.
In terms of this window, it's a very, very, in fact, the best window we've had with incomings compared to what we used to. But what we used to is very mediocre. So it's not like we've had this brilliant window. It's a good window by our standards. Now, for me, this is how I look at it. This is how I look at it now. And I actually agree a little bit with Sean on the Bournemouth bit, right? I don't fully think Ange was to blame for us finishing 17th last year. Should he have finished higher in the league? Yes, he should have. Yes, he should have. Right, Johnny, let me just land the point and before you have your say, right? And by all means, have your say. I've always said no Spurs manager can compete on all 4 fronts. We don't have the quality to do it, which is why no Spurs manager under this ownership has finished top 6 and won a trophy. They've never done both. It's either do really well in the league or win a trophy. And won a trophy. We were a shit show in the league. We should have been at least mid-table, though, at least. And that's why he got sacked. So I expect Frank to either do half decent in the league, get into Europe, whether it's 6th, 7th, whatever, get into Europe, or you've got to do something decent in the cup, like a Carabao Cup. But for him to do that, he also needs the tools to do it because this squad isn't good enough. It simply isn't. So it can't be that we're going to have a season where we say, oh, look how well we are against PSG. Look how well we are against Burnley. Look how well we are against Man City. The Frank effect, the professor. Look at the structure. Look at the football. Look how well he's developing Sarr. Look how well he's developing Richarlison. But then when we lose, oh, Levy's fucked us. Levy hasn't backed him. We're short on players. We weren't short on players against Burnley and Man City. So the way I look at it is this. When we lose, we do have to look at the manager, but we've got to look at the performance, not the result. If we gave Bournemouth a game and we lost by a goal, but we gave them a really good game and we were just unlucky or VAR didn't go for us or players just missed some half-decent chances, you'd say, do you know what? I don't blame Frank for that. It's not his fault because the players on the pitch, we had plenty of chances. We had good possession. We dominated Bournemouth. It just didn't work for us on the day. It's the lack of quality on the pitch. But when the whole team has a stinker, when the whole team was shit, and they were, other than Van de Ven and Vicario, I'm sorry. That was a tactical failure, and he didn't adapt. He should have, and he didn't know what to do when we went 1-0 down. If we lose the next game to West Ham, but we fucking give West Ham a game, I won't blame Frank. I'll look at the players and say, you're not good enough. You're fucking not good enough. And I think we're going to have a season where we win games. We lose some because the manager got it wrong. We're going to win games because the manager got it right. And we're going to lose games because the players, they just aren't good enough. I think we're going to have that up and down season, which is why I said I'm going to give him a season, see how it goes. But I don't think we can blame Levy for everything. Frank has to prove himself. But for the last 5-6 years, I don't think we've ever had a good squad. Under Conte, under Jose, under Nuno, under Ange, and under this guy. I don't think we've ever had a good squad. And right now, I think the same applies. I think the starting 11's improved with the signings, but the squad is nowhere near good enough, Sean. I really don't think this squad is good enough. For the 4 competitions we're in, what manager can deal with that? And that's where I'm at with it, guys. That's my final say. Sorry.
Is the squad better than it was under Ange's last season?
When you factor in the injuries, no.
I agree.
Because we've lost all our goals. If Mawani comes in and Simmons come in, Sean, and they start banging the ball in the back of the net, then it's fair to say, actually, it's as good or maybe better. But until they start playing, I can't really answer that. I've got to let that play out, haven't I?
I come at it different. I think it is better now, given these last 2 signings. I think with Mawani and I take your point. You've obviously got to see how they settle in, but I think on paper it is better.
To me, the squad is way better. I'm not taking away that Ange got absolutely slammed with injuries. It happens, and that's why I absolutely concede that in the defensive end of the pitch, we've got a problem that's waiting to explode, 100%. And that's why when I was sitting there saying all the last few days, and everyone was saying we need the priority has to be a left winger. It has to be, that has to be the thing in a 9, whatever. I'm thinking, well, what about? Originally, it wasn't that long ago. I was thinking we can probably suffice, but when we were loaning out Boskovic and there was no real news, no real, in my opinion, viable options, because I didn't see Ake or Akanji as viable because I know that Man City are just playing us. I'm thinking now you can't go to a back 5 and the back 4 is still 1 or 2 injuries away from being absolutely decimated. And then it doesn't matter how many goals you can create with this new look front 4. Solanke's injuries put another dampener in it. You just right now, it's bollocks crossed and fingers crossed that everyone comes back from international break. And if one of those back 4 get injured, and by the way, I would actually make the argument that Jed Spence is the least, the most valuable player in there because he has the versatility that no one else has. And if you're sitting there thinking that, don't worry about the left back and the right back because Jed Spence can play at either, that versatility is a blessing, but it's a curse because if the versatile player gets injured, you lose that option on both sides. Same with people at the top end of the pitch. Guys, we can carry on for like 10 more minutes. We've already broken the 2-hour barrier, so
I'm done.
The admin stuff is problematic, but if you want to, everyone wants final say, we can do it. We've got some super chats to go, and then we can round off. Anyone hasn't had their say on this particular topic or the window in general?
No, we're just a fraction short again, aren't we? I think January is going to be really important for us. Really important. I just hope we can stay in the top half of the table, so we're there or thereabouts for the challenge for 5th. We can stay in the cups. Champions League, we've got to be relevant till Christmas. So the last 2 games, we've got something to play for, which hopefully we will, because it's not the worst draw that we've had. But none of those games will be easy. So as I say, it's fingers crossed that all players don't get injured. We're going to pick up injuries. I just hope they're not long term and they're not absolutely key players. Otherwise, we are stuffed.
Quick question.
One thing to add, just to be sorry, Sean, just to be give a little bit of positivity. I think the draw in the Champions League is really, really kind to us, and I do think they're actually, if we get the results that we should in those games, I think there's some games hopefully later on that you can make a couple of changes in and rotate a little bit without obviously jeopardising the result, and obviously also getting an easy draw in the Carabao. That's another one where you're not looking at necessarily having to play the first team. So hopefully if we get fortunate with draws like that, that will help the whole squad piece. But I agree with the fundamental point.
Super quick before I do the super chats, Connor, I'll start with you. Just to clarify, so what's your rating out of 10 all in on terms of the squad? And just so I understand, because I think there is a difference. I think there is something going on with the narrative tonight that the rating of the actual window is different to the rating of the club. So, I'd like to know what you think about the window, just a one number answer, and then if it's different, do you have a different perspective for the actual club? Because I feel like there's a different narrative. There's 2 different narratives here.
Solomon's fallen through, by the way.
Yeah.
I think he might be going Villarreal now, mightn't he? But so on your question, 7/7.5 for the window. In terms of the squad, I think I still think we've got an outside chance of finishing 5th. Personally, I think if we get fortunate with injuries, I could see us being anywhere between 5th and 8th based on injuries, because I do think Frank's a great manager, and I also do think that actually, we've already seen the start that Villa have had. Newcastle already playing catch up as well a little bit, right? So. And it's gonna depend on how quickly some of their signings settle in as well as ours. So, I for the squad, I'm probably like what am I rating the number relative to?
Sorry, it was more around for the window in terms of how we did. But no, sorry, the second part was like, how do you think the club? Because I feel like there's another angle here where you feel like what we've done well with, but it seems like there's something in the kind of zeitgeist here that you guys are all saying that the club didn't do well enough. Like the window's good, but like somehow, I don't know, whoever the decision makers weren't backing Thomas Frank or something. Like, is there a separate kind of vibe here, or are you just 7.5 reasonable?